Welcome to the Joe Rogan Experience. I am your lib right and one of your hosts, Liquid Narrator. Today I am joined by our lib left, anderviel.
Nice to be here.
Our off left, alcaeus the Undefeated.
It's me, I'm back.
Our off right, Proxy General.
Hello, good evening.
And our centrist, Breadmaker.
Still alive. Hello.
And today we will be debating the topic of what divides people more, class or nationality. So, seeing that I have no opinion on this, I shall Alcius start because I know he actually does have an opinion on this. So go ahead, Alcius.
Well, my opinion is pretty clear. It's class. Class divide more than nationality. And like I said before, there is more difference between an Italian proletarian and an Italian bourgeois than an Italian proletarian and a Spanish, Turkish, or whatever proletarian. Because this class struggle is not just a national struggle. It's worldwide, a worldwide struggle. So yeah, that's pretty much how I could resume my views.
Does anyone disagree with what he says? Proxy, we know you do, so you might as well just get out of the way now.
Well, I mean, I do have to agree on some parts of this because despite my disagreements with the ideology of socialism, I do have to agree with the fact that class is somewhat divisive, at least at least at this point of society, because
Is that it?
sorry, the audio cut out for a moment.
Alright.
Because despite my disagreements with the parts about the race, I do have to agree that at this point of capitalism that we exist in, we're somewhat divided by class as well, to a point that the lower class, the working men of society, those that own their own small businesses or are at working in one, are more damaged than those that are at the top, to speak of such. I don't believe that in the things like proletariat, the workers and such that the communists are speaking of. However, I do believe that at least the majority of the 1% are damaging the society we're living in.
Okay, I think we can agree on many things, but I will come back to that if anyone want to say something.
As I said, I'm completely on the fence. I don't know which it is. I'm not. I don't.
There, maybe.
Yeah, I'm pretty much just going to agree with alcaeus on this one. I mean, I am an expat. I live in a different country than the one I was born in. And I'm also like the child of immigrants from the perspective of my original country. So it's one thing where it's like, except for in cases of geopolitical strife, and even then, it can be argued, nationality obviously affects like your culture, but in terms of affecting your interests, pretty much everybody living in like a modern non-war based country has the same interests. Like, you have enough money to live the life that you want to, and then living the life that you want to. And nationality does not affect these as much as class. Just at all. At all.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
yeah.
I agree.
I mean, I do have to disagree here that despite my agreement that class is somewhat divisive, at least at this point of society, not the class system itself, I do believe that nationality plays a larger role in divided society than class, because class is something completely social. Despite that, nationality is something genetic. So, regardless of what to do to an individual, you can change him to a point. However, his genetic prevails. class something you basically align some individual either at birth or at some point of his life. You can still you can change what he already is.
Okay, but maybe stay. Don't move too much of your mouth of your mic because the sound is variating a lot.
Oh, maybe I could fix the audio quality or something, but I'm not moving the microphone at the moment.
Okay. And
That's
Brainmaker.
poor sound quality. Although I'm going to buy a real microphone in the future, so I can have a better audio quality. So
Yeah, no
my point
problem.
was that despite the class differences, that's somewhat, how can I say it? It's somewhat adjustable, if you will. So say there are two individuals of the same race, and two of the individuals of different races but the same class. You will have, excuse me, you will find more differences in the individuals of the same class but different race in terms of behavior and overall, up, uh, how can I say it in a polite manner? Uh, in overall being, not just their behavior, because people are more defined by their birth than what they're assigned as in a society. I could
Okay,
be
okay.
I could basically belong to a low class, a middle class, or even the 1%. That still doesn't change who I was born as, my genetics. That is more determined by nationality than something have determined by my economic possessions.
Okay. And Brainmaker, what's your opinion?
Oh, I'm agreeing with everybody. Class divides us way more than nationality. Nationality is just culture that has been there for, well, as long as the lines on the map have. But class can decide what you know, who you know, what you live like, what you eat, what you sleep on. Get better bed. But
Yeah.
class divides us way, way more than nationality.
Okay.
And that's
Well, I
and by
can go further in my explanation and also explaining a little bit more where I come from. So, starting off, I'm what we could call a materialist. In this idea of historical of this historical materialism that studied Karl Marx, and so a big thing is that the class struggle is a constant in history. And it's even more true, I think, in our period of time, because there is a sentence that Karl Marx said, and it's more Engel, but it's well known, is the proletarian have no country. And I think Proxy will disagree with that, but I'm going to explain. If the proletarian have no country, it's because the globalist bourgeoisie have no country neither. And this system of, how to say that, exploitation, that isn't a bad term, it's a factual term, exploitation, is worldwide. The big bourgeoisie don't have a country, don't have a nation, because they don't care about the history of a country or the culture or the value system. And that's why this system of exploitation is not a national problem. And this is why the bourgeoisie all around the world is less divided than by that class or more divided by their class with the bourgeoisie than between each other. And there is a big difference to make between, because you talked about the nation. The fact that we are more divided by class doesn't mean that we don't have nations, and that nations should either die or shouldn't be acknowledged. Because each nation have its own cultural differences, and Marx said himself that the revolution have to be national. It's just a way to say that all socialist countries should unite themselves together in a sort of union of countries, if you want. I hope I made my my views a bit more clear.
Well,
Yeah,
as
that's it. So
Yeah.
well, I still believe though that how can I put it? That look, um, is the microphone working? Because I'm kind of hearing an echo
Yeah,
in the
we hear you.
recording.
We can hear you.
Oh, I think wait, if I left the channel, would the recording stop right now? I want to just leave and come back just to see if the audio fixes itself.
Okay.
I'm sorry. What just happened?
Well, it's
He's gonna leave and join back so his
yeah.
audio fixes.
Oh, great.
Well, if oh, you're there. Okay.
Yeah, I think the audio improved a bit. Just a few moments ago, I heard something like an echo in the microphone. So anyway, I kind of agree with you in the purpose of class. However, I don't believe it is division enough to be a problem. I mean, in economic terms, it kind of has become a problem, but as in the late years of when we've come to basically abolish the golden standard. So the economy has become more stable, and the lower class just keeps growing out of proportion. I believe that's more of an issue that the system of class existing by itself. Because if well managed, that can basically result in a well-structured society. At least that's my personal opinion, because I believe that a society to prosper must have some sort of hierarchy embedded into it. And if you take that hierarchy out of society forcefully, you just end up, it's either impossible to do it, or you do it by basically forcing it out of the civilian population. Kind of like what Stalin tried to pull out, to pull off, I mean.
Okay. Yeah.
Where he basically used collectivist policies like those of basically redistributing of basically uh, property redistribution, which was a Soviet program, and which
Mhm.
was basically distribute the riches among society to basically equalize them by force. That didn't end up well because, well, we already have proof of that, that it didn't end exactly in the way he imagined. Uh, we can see that by the looking at the statistics of the time, where we can see that the average population had way much less food than it used to have, and they lived poorer lifestyles. And we can also see that in the Russian famines under the Soviet, yeah, and we can see that also by a higher rate of famines, like the Holodomor, for example, where hundreds, if not thousands, of people basically starved to death due to the redistributory policies of Stalin. So yeah, I do believe that if you try to forcefully equalize society out of its hierarchy, you basically that results in a worse society to begin with.
Okay. Oh, there are some points where I think it's a bit more complex with Stalin regulation and all that, but we can come back to that later if anyone have something to add.
I don't think we need to do the whole Stalin bad bit. I think most people have gotten that by this point, and it's kind of a dull thing to argue at this point.
Yeah, mainly
yes,
because Stalin isn't communism, and he's in the
Yeah,
USSR.
It
But,
wasn't
yeah.
real communism.
I'm aware of it
right,
wasn't real
yeah.
communism, but
No, I'm not saying
yeah,
that. I'm not saying that it wasn't real communism or anything like that.
But you said he wasn't a communist.
No, I said he isn't communism. Communism isn't just Stalin, is what I was trying to say.
Yeah, Stalin had a very specific, very authoritarian
Yeah.
view on what communism should be. He even obviously his policy of communism in one country was in stark contrast to earlier Marxists and of course Trotsky. So painting all communism is what Stalin said is not a brush that is true. That's
Well,
it.
I have to agree with that Stalin isn't exactly the sole definition of communism. However, he's one stark example of it, because we can see the same pattern of authoritarianism in basically most other cases of communism, if not all of them. I don't think there has been even one case of a successful libertarian communist revolution that has resulted in a form of government.
The
You can
commune
take a,
in France.
Hmm?
The commune
yeah,
in
which failed
France.
though.
What
It
happened in
failed though.
Spain too?
They lost the war though. And
Well,
I could
yes,
say that they lost pretty
because they were
miserably.
against a much powerful army, of course.
I mean, you could also say that in a way that they were up against a more successful army, and that success comes from the fact that the government was more efficient at its job. As at the
I
start
mean,
of the
if you
war,
go
though,
on this argument, then what about the USSR, which won against the White Army?
yeah, because of
And the
numbers, though.
government is more efficient in the USSR than the Tsarist Russia.
Yeah, however, those were different examples because we will come to the case with numbers. In the case of the Civil War, it was basically nearly exactly determined by inner matters. Because they were, despite the interference of the Axis powers, us and the Allies as well, because the Republic had help from the Americans, and Franco also had help from the Axis, most notably Italy and Germany. However, that help was minimal. Anarchist Spain, though, uh, didn't have any help from shit. Even in cases when the numbers were basically proportional to the enemy, they still lost the war because of the lack of efficiency. Because in the anarchy system, it wasn't pretty much organized, and that comes inherent with the ideology of anarchy. That despite how much you basically think of it at first, it becomes disorganized very quickly because every individual goes for himself, and you
Yeah.
can force them to basically gather a single mentality. You could say that it is a class mentality, a national mentality, a mob mentality, whatever you call it, that basically requires a central authority to organize it. If you don't have one and everyone is basically acting on themselves on behalf of their own individual benefits, that doesn't come pretty well at the end. It basically pulls itself apart in the matter of months, which was basically what happened in the Civil War. The anarchist front will collapse pretty quickly after its foundation.
Okay.
But what I mean, besides that instance, no other case of libertarian communism has. It depends on what you call the succeeded, because well, some forms may have formed over human history, like the Paris Commune. However, those cases quickly collapsed due to a lack of efficiency. at maintaining them.
More lack of a strong military force. Most of
Yeah,
them
which
was
comes to a lack of
retaken
organization.
by an army.
That also comes to a lack of organization, which is inherent to a libertarian communist ideology. Because an organized military, an organized population, and a singular mentality to unite the population all needs a central authority. So let's say a pretty strongly libertarian regime, if you could even call it a regime, lacks those, how can I say, characteristics.
Okay.
So it falls on itself. Like it
Uh,
happened with the Paris Commune, like it happened with anarchist Spain, like it happened with Chaz.
Anyone want to add something? Andre, Ander, Breadmaker.
No, I think he summed it up pretty good.
And you, Ander?
No, I nothing to add right now.
Okay. But I think we can nearly all agree on one thing, is that the globalist bourgeoisie or elite should be taken down.
Oh yes, 100%.
Well, I disagree with the term bourgeoisie, but despite that, I somewhat agree. Yes.
I mean, that's what they are. They are bourgeois.
I 100% agree with
The thing
Alcius
is
on
that
this.
the communist ideology basically points out that the entirety of the rich are at fault. I disagree with that. I believe that uh, not everyone that is rich is basically at fault, but a specific number of them.
Yeah,
Like
the high
you could say
echelon.
the majority of the 1%, not everyone. Say Elon Musk, for example. I don't believe that
No, no,
everyone
no,
is.
no, 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 no. I'm sorry. He has photos of Ghislaine Maxwell. Like he's in it as well. They're all in on it.
Yeah,
Okay.
but as
Elon
much,
Musk is a piece
we
of
like to
shit.
believe. Because he's more for his personal gain, not for a specific agenda.
No, I mean he is though. Like look at all the. All I'm saying is I think he's completely in on the agenda, and I think the people who sim for him are fucking retards.
I
It's
don't
a sim.
seem for. I
I'm not
don't
saying you.
seem
I'm
for
not
him
saying you
either.
do. I'm not saying you do. I'm just saying he's completely in on it as well. He's just trying to like portray himself as like, oh hey, I'm that cool guy. I have Deus Ex as my profile picture at one point, and really, he's with them on this completely.
I mean, he
He's not like
literally had a plan on putting chips on people's brain.
yeah, exactly. I was gonna measure. Yeah, what the fuck's it called again?
Oh, I don't remember.
Neuralink.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Like
believe he does most of this for his own personal gain, for his company. I don't believe he follows a specific agenda, which is pretty much a pattern you could see in most other elites, though.
no,
I believe that
It's
not everyone
it's the
who has
bourgeoisie.
money.
The
I believe
bourgeoisie
that.
may do everything for their own gain.
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the thing I disagree with you. That I don't find it inherently wrong that an individual gains riches from basically self gain. In that, in at least in a somewhat free economy, I believe that people have the right to basically
That
manage their
mic
own
quality.
interests. Hmm?
Yeah,
That
sometimes
mic
we
quality.
don't really hear you.
You said it
What
underwater at times.
what I'm saying is that I believe that someone should have the right to mind his own personal interests, economically speaking. However, there is a specific number of the elite that don't have their own interests in mind and have a specific agenda to follow.
Uh,
Like the Rothschilds, the how do you call them? The other American family, the
at
bankers,
least if we
The
disagree on the
Rockefellers.
the Rockefellers. Yes,
if
the
we
Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, Soros, Bloomberg,
So
and
I would
other such
I'll,
cases.
let me take a counter argument. I would argue that when you get to like the Elon Musk, Rockefeller like levels of money, I think once you get to that point, you kind of have to be in with them, or they'll fucking kill you. Because I think the last person who like got to like that level of power and wealth that wasn't with them, I would argue, was JFK, who was fucking killed by them.
I
So I
mean, he
think
did say something about exposing them in the end of his regime. I
yeah,
think he specified something like that.
yeah, something like that. But yeah, exactly. So I would say the last one who like got to that level of power was JFK, and we know how JFK ended. So I think once you get
But
to that point,
yeah,
you have to be in with them. You have to be doing all this
Yeah, I agree
horrific
with that.
shit.
And
So
that does. Oh, sorry, continue.
So when seeing at the level Elon's at now, I would say he is with them, and he's not doing stuff like Neuralink for his own personal gain. He is doing that as part of their agenda, because to stay at the point he is at without getting Epsteined or JFK'd or any of the examples we can give, without him ending up like them, he has to be with their agenda. If he's for it or not, we can debate that. I don't know, but he's still with them. So at the same time, I still say fuck him.
what I'm gonna argue is that if we can't agree on the motivation, at least we can agree on the consequences. That this
Yes.
globalist bourgeoisie don't care about the nations, and if they have to, they will erase nations, because the bourgeoisie
not
don't
only
have
that,
nations.
not only that, but if anyone comes to care for his own nation, he's quickly taken out.
So at least on
JFK,
that,
for example.
so at least on that
JFK,
we can agree. That it's in our best interest.
Saddam Hussein, Gaddafi, trying not to find another example.
If you want a slightly more recent example, less of a more of a smaller example, what would be
like everyone is sitting on Assad, for example, like every single social media platform trying to sit on him.
Same thing with like Tommy Robinson, who exposes quite a lot of stuff that's happening with
Or Poland.
the globalist the globalism that's coming to Britain and the Islamification of it. He talks quite a lot about that, and the British government go out their way to fuck with him. So that's another more modern example. But you do see that where if you try to stop this shit, they will fuck you. Bad.
Yeah, or at least try to. Sometimes they're successful, sometimes they're not.
Yeah,
they try to.
I mean, they still haven't gotten Snowden, so.
Yeah, sometimes it is usually one of the two ways. At first, they would try to persuade him to join their side. If he declines and continues this path, he will either be assassinated, aka kill himself. You know what I mean by this.
Yeah.
Or if that doesn't succeed exactly, they will go to war, like it was the case with Iraq, Iran, Syria. Or you could also pick a case with what was another example?
Yeah, I would not be surprised if
And there
war
was another
breaks out.
country, I think in the Americas, that happened similar. I think
Yeah,
Argentine with a dictatorship.
I wouldn't be surprised if war breaks out in Africa fairly soon between some of the countries in the West, because if you were not paying attention, there was a pandemic treaty that the world it wasn't the World Economic Forum, it was the World Health Organization was trying to get signed so they could do stuff like lockdowns, vaccine passports, all that all over again, and it's automatically what you have to do as part of this treaty. And nearly I think the entire West signed it, and the people that didn't sign it were let me try to remember. It was quite a lot of them were African countries. I want to say Brazil was one of them.
I think it was two in Africa and another one in the Americas. I think Puerto Rico or something.
Puerto Rico might have been one of them. It was some South American, some African. And they basically just stopped that from being a worldwide treaty. So I wouldn't be surprised if some shit happens to them soon. I want to say it was Brazil. I want to say it was Brazil.
I think it was a few months ago. But not
Yeah,
only just a few months ago, it was back in 2021 when I think three politicians died suddenly. And it was pretty odd coincidence that all of them were part of the countries that denied this sort of COVID thing.
But I swear another Clinton aide. Yeah, another Clinton aide was just killed. Like just a few days. Let me get this up.
Yeah, I believe that if anyone has the interest of his own nation, he's going to fall, unless there is some sort of cooperation between nations in that matter. I'm not talking about unions or international shit. I'm talking about like cooperation, like some sort of national front.
Okay.
That sounds odd out of
All right.
context, but I mean like a cooperation between individuals and parties among countries. Just
All right, I
check.
find what I was talking about. So, family of Bill Clinton advisor who admitted Jeffrey Epstein into the White House several times has blocked release of files pertaining to the death scene after he was found hanging from a tree with a shotgun blast at a ranch 30 miles from his home. Top Clinton advisor Mark Middleton died by suicide at the age of 59 on fucking Daily Mail articles. I swear to fucking God, when we get this up. The Daily Mail's website is, I want to say it's the Daily Mail. It's atrocious. Let me get this. Yeah, there it is. The Daily Mail's website is fucking wank. Anyway, died by suicide at the age of 59 on May 7th. Yeah, so he died there in Arkansas. But yeah, that's another one gone. That's another one gone. And now they're trying to block the release of files pertaining to it. So even if you're on their side, you still get suicided like this all the time. So
Yeah.
You know what's
basically, don't join them.
Yeah, that's the thing, that it's basically a circle, that the individuals who do oppose them basically either kill themselves, quote unquote, or basically or disappear, or they got it's against them, like Assad, like Hussein, Gaddafi, and other such cases.
Did you just say McAfee?
No, no, but I said Gaddafi. But
All
yeah,
right, I thought you said McAfee. I was about to say
yeah, McAfee as well.
Tito.
Like he was imprisoned in Spain for tax invasion, like. All right. And a few, was it weeks, months, days, I don't remember. He was basically found dead at his cell. And you know what's the funniest thing about this?
Can anyone understand him?
Vaguely.
Sorry, I'll try to buy a new microphone soon because I'm basically using my camera.
Okay.
Jesus
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Christ.
used to have a microphone embedded into my headset. However, the cable got ripped apart.
I didn't hear a word of that.
Yeah. For
What?
now, it's pretty bad.
Let me fix a little of the sound settings.
Jesus, that was.
Is it better now?
It's louder.
For now, we hear you at least.
Well, the thing is that McCarthy was suddenly imprisoned in Spain, supposedly for tax evasion, and then he was found suddenly hanged in his cell. Could you hear that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a bit
So the
better.
thing is that that the ironic part of it is that
I didn't hear that.
was it a few days before his suicide, supposedly suicide, he tweeted something saying that if he suddenly dies, it wasn't by suicide because he let me bring you to it, for example.
He's also a well-known troll.
Yeah, he has Joseph Joestar as his profile picture. Like he's Elon Musk, but more genuine.
McAfee being murdered. I don't. I'm 50-50 on that one.
Well, I should read it. I should basically read the tweet itself to be clearer. Uh, Let me see the tweet itself. If I find it, because it surprisingly had to do so. Oh, I am content in here. I have friends. The food is good. All is well. Know that if I hang myself, a lifestyle, it will be no fault of mine.
Yeah, but he was
That's
also a
basically his
troll.
tweet. He also said that if he's found dead, he basically got whacked and not suicided.
I'll point out he also did what, like, it came up on his Instagram not long after he died. The letter Q came up on it, and I think I've already made my feelings about QAnon pretty explicit.
That is kind of, to be honest, I kind of have mixed feelings on QAnon because some parts of it are genuine, but
Yeah,
you have to dig into it to find them. Like the few gems of it that are true are hidden in a pile of shit. You don't know which is true though. That is the problem with QAnon.
nah, there's some truth to it. Like all the Trump shadowware stuff is absolute dog shit.
Yeah, that's the thing. The few things that are true are basically submerged in a pile of shit. So in appearance, you can deceive someone by making him think that all of it is nonsense. Like take Pizza Kid for example. That conspiracy could be kind of true, at least personally. But if you start
Okay,
saying
but
shit
that
like,
pizza place didn't even have a basement.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
I get the idea they're going for, but that was just
it
they
could
didn't even have a basement.
it could be hidden. I mean, how do you know a house doesn't have a basement if it is hidden?
That sounds
I
like
think because
coke.
the building plans actually are approved, like by the city, and you
Yeah,
can
you can
actually get.
construct a hidden cave like that.
Yeah.
Okay, if your argument is that they constructed a thing and then hid it, but like there is no record of there ever having been any kind of construction. When I say no record, I mean like generally if you're digging out a massive underground cavern, somebody in the neighborhood's going to notice that they're like hauling out massive metric tons of like rock and dirt.
And you can do it by hand.
Well, granted, but I think that wasn't specific to Pizzagate as in the building. I mean, the whole conspiracy theory about child trafficking, the elite using them and shit like that. Uh, a kernel of it is true. But, I mean, a kernel of it is true. However, it is
Yeah,
submerged in a pile of
I
shit.
agree a
Like
kernel
the
of it
things
is
about
true, but
basically Trump being the only person against the deep state, things about aliens, reptoids, and shit like that are basically bullshit. And I believe that it's basically set up like this intentionally. Because if it weren't for that part of the whole conspiracy theory shit, most people would believe it. Like I don't believe anyone dismisses the stuff about pedophiles and the government and uh, conspiracy about people being killed if they go against the state. That's basically common knowledge. However, if you spread shit about reptoids, aliens, Trump, shadow government, and stuff like that, most people are going to dismiss all kinds of conspiracy theories, thinking they are all similar bullshit. So I
that's
believe some of them are intentionally laid as false flags.
that's why I call QAnon a psyop.
Yeah, basically psyop. If you put it shortly. So
Yeah, it's fucking absolute nonsense.
yeah, and I think Trump is kind of in it
Oh, he
as part
is.
of.
Yeah, he is. He's just
Like I
there.
think
He's there.
if the man truly wanted to save America, he had several ways to achieve this. But he basically spent all his time tweeting. The only thing he fixed is the economy purely.
That's why like when there's like when there's like conspiracy theories talking about how awful the Democrats are and how much Trump is on our side, it angers me.
Basically, Ben Garrison.
Yeah, like the thing is just like Trump was there to divide people against the no, so the elites, like no one was focusing on that shit because they were all arguing about if Trump was good or not and how evil those Democrats are, and it's just like it just annoys me that people actually buy into the partisan politics bullshit when it's really just there to divide people. I don't see the point in it. I'm not a big fan of democracy in general, to be fair, but like all of
Democracy is cringe.
Are you libertarian?
what?
Are you kind of libertarian or are you more
Yeah.
of an anarchist?
Uh, I don't know. I don't really know. I don't really like say I'm any individual ideology. I just believe what I believe. I don't see the point in sticking to one ideology. Like I think lots of them have got like all right stuff in them, but
Yeah, but which one would you describe yourself as?
none.
At least most accurately.
Libertarian maybe, I don't know. None.
Yeah, but libertarians basically believe in democracy
Yeah, and
inherently.
I disagree with them on that part. That's why I don't say I'm a libertarian most of the
Which
time.
form of government do you prefer then?
Again, I don't. I just I don't like follow one specific thing.
He's just
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of there.
Yeah, what part of it aren't you getting?
You want to be left alone somewhere.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. Yeah, I don't follow any specific ideology. If you had to make me choose one, maybe like what Ted Kaczynski talks about, probably that. But does that even have a name? Some
It's basically anarcho-primitivism or something similar.
Sure, that then anarcho primitivism. That's what I am then. But as I said, I don't really
Go back to
bother
monkey.
with. Yeah, genuinely.
Uh, I believe you could achieve something similar with just an agrarian society, not necessarily an anarchist one.
What just
Oh,
joined?
hey. Why you
Who
homosexual?
joined?
Wait, who joined?
Yeah, he's there.
Homie joined.
Oh right.
So the thing is that you can achieve something similar without anarchism. You can basically do something similar with an agrarian society, which focuses more on farming, self-sustainability. Basically, the closest thing to that is the first American Republic. I mean, the United States at the first years of its existence. Think of the founding fathers and what they built at first, before the parties. Everyone was self-sufficient. Everyone had a farm on next to their home. Everyone sewed their own clothes. Everyone was basically self-sustainable.
Yeah, but then but the point of that of what Ted Kaczynski writes about though is about technological advancement as well. But the thing is, if you just leave everything like that, it'll just happen again. So I think you do need to completely go all the way back.
So if you think of something before the American Revolution, maybe British New England, which I mean it was more autonomous as a system. Like everyone was basically divided into villages,
Well, the issue was
more or less.
the issue was the Industrial Revolution.
And its
Unironically.
consequences.
But
I mean, I kind
as
of disagree with that. I don't believe it is the sole problem. At least not completely.
oh no, there's been problems since it, but that was like the starting point.
I believe the starting point, more or less, was the Enlightenment, not the Industrial Revolution.
What do you see as the problems with the Enlightenment?
Ideologically and philosophically speaking, because it promoted ideologies such as individualism, secularism, masonry, most things of the world like feminism or leftism basically originate from Enlightenment and the people that push for it.
We derailed a lot from the subject.
Yeah, that's what happens when you bring up
Kind
the
of.
globalists.
But I wanted to say also, even because the reason I hate the globalist elite, which is the bourgeoisie, is really different from yours, Proxy. But even with that, I hate them because they are a threat to the proletarian class. And for you, I mean, the big bourgeoisie, this 1%, is a threat to the nations. Because if they have to, they could erase cultures, nation, histories. They don't care about all this.
Yeah, just profit.
Yeah, basically.
So at least on that, we can agree that this division between classes is important because for you, it can be a threat to your nation and your culture and all that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because I believe that I believe in something more than just the economy. I believe that the economical collapse is one side of the problem. I believe the majority of it and what the elites are truly pursuing, in my opinion, is basically the abolition of nations
Yeah, you're more
in
of
general.
an idealist than a
Hmm?
materialist.
What?
You're more of an idealist than a materialist.
What do you mean by that?
It will be complicated to explain. Those are two views on history, the world, and all that. Materialism is based on the fact that it's the material condition that will influence ideas, life, and
No, an
everything.
idealism is when it is changed by ideas, and
Yeah,
basically
the
by
ideas will be
yes.
the motor of the world and what make him go forward, if you will.
Well, I believe that it's not exactly one-sided like that. I believe it's combination because if you think of it, what they are trying to change is inherently materialistic. Besides the part about cultures, ideologies, and stuff like that, there's also the thing that a nation is defined by blood. So if you change that, you inherently change the entirety of the people by material characteristic. Is I believe that what the elites are at least partially pursuing is the abolition of nations, or at least the incorporation of many of them into one. Basically, globalism in an extent.
Okay,
Uh,
yeah.
and that comes to the reason that if you basically take the national identity from a people, you basically erase a part of their identity and what they are.
That, for example, is idealist idea because this is this idea of a nation which is immaterial. Nation is not an object, is not physical,
It
it's
is
an
both
idea.
physical and not. I believe it is both. Because if you think of it like the blood of a nation is both something physical and metaphysical. It is
Yeah,
it is both what we are and what we, our ancestors, our legacy, our history, our
yeah, it's
culture.
something we couldn't agree
So
on.
if you basically erase all of that, if you take that out of a nation, that nation ceases to exist. You have a people with no identity, no common features that are basically divisible. So they are more controllable and manipulated by someone.
Yeah,
And that
okay.
is their goal, I believe. Because if you take basically the entire global population, erase their national identity, rip them from their culture, erase their common past, erase anything that unifies them, and spoil everything that divides them, whether that is something economic, something ideological, anything basically that divides them, and erase anything that unifies people. You basically have an entire mass without identity, without anything, and that easily obeys you. And that is something we can already see today. Take Western societies like the America, for example.
Yeah,
The United States is basically something that has lost its identity. It is easily divisible and easily manipulated.
well, it's hard
Yeah.
to understand what you say sometimes.
Yeah, I'm trying to basically fix the audio quality sometime, but at the present, not so much.
This will be fun to edit.
Also,
Yeah, but at least it's shortened.
Yeah, I kind of sound like something between an Indian and an Italian, but with worse audio quality.
Though
Somehow.
I have
yeah.
a question.
Yes.
So I'm a big fan of actually the old Greek philosophers, particularly the Stoics, but then also Diogenes is truly based. And
Which
Diogenes
one?
is actually
He means
Diogenes,
the
maybe.
he means the crack barrel guy.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
are
he was the
two
guy who lived in the barrel.
Diogenes, technically.
Yeah,
Sorry,
he means the
I don't.
one
The one
the
that
close.
lived in a barrel and pissed everywhere.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, he basically
Okay.
publicly ejaculated, and once basically
Didn't
how
he
do you
also
say?
pluck all the feathers off of a chicken because one of the
Plato
other
said,
philosophers' response to what a
yeah, basically Plato said that human is defined as featherless bipedal, thinking that the only bipedal thing in existence is a chicken, and so if you take out the feathers, that's basically a human. So Diogenes literally did that, took a chicken, plucked it off its feathers, and slammed it in front of Plato in his university. So in front of his own students, he humiliated him.
Yeah. But
He also turned down a offer from Alexander the Great. I forgot what that was for and about.
yeah, Alexander
Okay,
stood up.
the Alexander the Great story. My understanding is, first of all of this is apocryphal, right? Like, there's a
Yeah.
bajillion stories about Diogenes, probably because he was such a Chad. The number of ones that we could actually say are true is it's kind of hard to tell. But the one that I heard with Alexander the Great involved what there's actually several. But one involved him coming and to see this Diogenes and saying like, "Oh, okay, I've met Diogenes. Is there anything you would like of me?" And he says, "Yes, please, like, move. You're standing in my sunlight." Which is a pretty ballsy thing to say to,
A dude who has literally conquered most of the known world at the time.
And
Yeah.
besides that, he basically considered himself a god or something.
But
Which
what
is
were you
followed up
going to
with,
say?
Huh?
We're about to ask a question.
oh, me?
Before
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Though I wanted to just finish with the, apparently, according to the story, Alexander then responded by saying, "Ha, if I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes." To which Diogenes responded, "If I were not Diogenes, I too would wish to be Diogenes."
Chad.
No, yeah, Chad. But I was going to say, Diogenes, one of the things is he considered himself a cosmopolitan, which is to say that despite the fact that, Greece at the time consisted of different nation states that all considered themselves not, I mean, they were all Hellenic cultures. But if you ask the Spartans, like, you're the part of the same nation as the Athenians, right? They'd kill you, for insulting them that badly.
I mean,
And
it depends, basically. They all believed that they were part of the same nation, but different city states. It was basically like, think of it like the Americas or something like Germany. The same race, but different states. So one person might identify more as a part of their own statehood or the nationality. And they may acknowledge that they are part of the same ethnic group, but they don't like each other. Think of it like the early German Empire basically dividing itself among the kingdoms. So basically, one may think that he's Wanterburgian, Bavarian, Austrian, Prussian, instead of being German. And that comes to the identity as well, because the passports and the citizenship was described not by German ethnicity, but by the statehood. Even though it was a single unified state, every passport basically said Prussian, Bavarian, Austrian, things like that, or Sicilian, where I think Silesia was part of Prussia. I think so. Hanover, I think that was independent.
okay, and this is the thing, because I guess I'm more on, I think, alcaeus's like level of thinking of nations as being cultural constructs. And when I think of that way, I mean, obviously nations oftentimes are linked to ethnicities that have traditionally lived in those nations, and ethnicities often carry with them specific ethnic cultures. But it's sort of like when I hear someone saying, "Well, if you take away, the national consciousness, then like they have no identity." It's sort of like, well, you can obviously, if you lose a national identity, then it if it isn't replaced with some other kind of identity, uh or held up by it, can leave people feeling, rootless. But identities of that type don't necessarily need to be tied, in my opinion, to ethnicity. I mean, the Romans, for instance, were pretty
Yes.
famous in terms of tying it to civic duty. Like, you could be black, you could be Chinese, you could be from wherever the hell, as long as you acted like a Roman and you did your Roman duty, you were a Roman. China as well is, I'm going to say traditional China, for whatever its faults were involving like a lack of innovation, an extremely stable, bureaucratic, and advanced culture that, it's like it didn't matter which of these ethnicities you were within them, as long as you acted like a Chinese person needs to as a subject of the emperor. And in these cases, I don't see the lack of sort of like an ethnic national culture, or a strong one at least, as having necessarily been bad for them. I think that, I mean, even the Soviets, right?
Yeah.
I am not gonna, hold up Stalin's Soviet, country as the epitome of what I think our country should be. But the national ethic of the Soviets, in terms of divorcing it from traditional views of nationhood and ethnicities and binding them into a new idealistic culture, did seem to actually provide like a lot of binding glue. And so I was just wondering, like, if you think that the sort of ethnic nationality is indispensable, like what you see these models as having lost by abandoning that.
Yeah, but on the other hand, that was tied to loyalty to the state, not the people themselves. That is also seen in China today, not just a historical China. The thing is that you're confusing a national identity with a state identity. That is actually tied to being loyal to the state itself.
Okay, so would you consider Trotsky's identity to be one that, because I mean, he obviously was not loyal to the state, he was loyal to the socialist and
Israel.
communist and Marxist cause. Uh, are you gonna give me he was like the Jewish shill who was trying to destroy communism line? Like, are you gonna like?
Uh, let's not get with. Sorry, continue.
Okay, but what I'm trying to say is, like, there are obviously
Preferably
people
don't
that
say the
were.
J word. I don't want to have to Bandage's
All
censoring
right,
that
all
shit.
right, all right. So I can't make any penny pitching. Ah,
Call them elves, alright? I don't want to have to censor
Goblins.
that shit.
Let's not
No.
call anybody a goblin. But the point I'm trying to making is, it's not always like you can point to some examples and be like, yeah, that's state psychology. And I'd say that, like, for instance, if you were talking about China, like the modern Chinese centrism or centered view around the state is definitely statism. But in previous, like, if you're talking about ancient China, it's like they literally had a culture that said, well, if the ruler sucks and then there's a revolution to overthrow the ruler, it's because, like,
They lost
heaven
the mandate of
and the
heaven.
exactly. It's like you should support the state, but not because the state is absolute. It's because heaven supports this state until it sucks, at which point it's totally fine to overthrow it, and the next guy is awesome.
Yeah, I support
And
that.
that's not statism in a way, because statism never says it's okay to overthrow me. Like, I cannot think of a statist culture that says, like, we are an absolute, but it's okay to flip the reset switch on all of us. Like, that doesn't.
That's actually pretty akin to monarchy as an ideology because you can see that in most historical monarchies, whether that is the Holy Roman Empire, Byzantium, Rome, the Chinese Empire, the Japanese Empire, anything. I mean, not as much as the Japanese Empire because the emperor was literally a god himself. So let's exclude that. My point is that the thing with the mandate of heaven or the divine right to rule or anything akin to that is basically that it is inherently lost when the ruler has lost its purpose. It is not something inherent, like at birth. It's something like God protects him as long as he's good at his job, basically. So
With
that
the
is
divine right of kings, like, my understanding is that the mandate of heaven and the divine right of kings were very different, because the divine right of kings, like, if I'm a peasant that leads a thing to kill my king, and then they're like, okay, you're awesome. Like, my understanding is the divine right of kings, as taught, like, in that culture, in that church, would not say, okay, Andrew the peasant is now blessed by God and is the new king. Like, if I was powerful enough, people would go, oh, well, we need a reason for this, and so we're going to call it, but it's not like the culture supported peasant revolutions to
it depends on
overthrow.
the nation, historically speaking.
Okay, okay. Like,
Like
if you've got.
unless we're talking about England or France. Like say in the Holy Roman Empire, for example, the emperor was supposed several times, and we see that with several dynasties. Same with Byzantium. Like it is especially tied to the military. So an emperor, besides being approved by God himself, he was also approved by his people at the same time. So if he lost his capability to rule a nation, he also lost the wrath of God, according to that philosophy.
Okay, so I think that's called providentialism in a way, like the idea that your blessedness, so to speak, directly is tied to your fortunes within like our world, and like the
Mm,
favor of God manifests in stuff happening to you in life. Like if you are beloved by God, you will have good things happen to you, and if you are not beloved by God, then you will have bad things happen to you. Like,
Not
is that
exactly. I mean, like the philosophy was, especially with the Roman Empire, most of their emperors were considered as saints. Take Justinian, for example, or Constantine. They were basically depicted as literal saints with halos before their own heads. Uh, they
yeah?
they essentially had a level of divinity around them, but at the same time when they were bound to what their actions are. So if an emperor was corrupt or incapable of ruling, they lost that divinity. Take Michael Angelos, for example, or not Michael Angelos something. What's his name? The one who basically caused the Fourth Crusade with his debts.
Oh, I don't know.
Angelos something. Let me check.
So I feel like we're diving pretty deep here. I apologize if it's going a little bit too deep. The main reason I brought it up was because I do believe that.
Alexios Angelos. Sorry, I remember the name.
Okay.
Okay,
So he was basically one of the worst emperors in Byzantine history. And so after his incompetence, he was basically devalued as a saint. And most of people didn't even consider him as a human being. Even today, most people who know about him uh, caution his name because his actions, his incapability to rule, basically led to the Fourth Crusade that sacked Constantinople. And that is one example that divinity isn't inherently something absolute. It can be basically challenged by your own actions as what you do in life.
So, Ander, you were about to say something?
uh, yeah, which was just that the reason I was sort of bringing this up is sort of that I personally do feel that a national identity is not necessarily superior or even necessary compared to just some kinds of group identity. I mean, for instance, you as a Greek Orthodox probably have an identity tied to that is slightly different, if at least overlapping, to your identity as like a member of the Greek nation, as well as your identities relating to what political affiliations you are part of, as well as what kind of, I mean, even beyond politics, you could have just like what ethical frameworks you think are important that tie you to the other people that share those opinions. And the sum of these is a pretty large amount where, if you look at it that way, I don't really feel that necessarily national identities are that important.
I'd
And I was
say,
just wondering.
I believe that national identity is more founded on reality. That's something completely cultural or uh, how can I describe it? Something hereditary, like say a Roman citizen. That is something completely based on the identity of the Roman Empire as a state. However, a national identity is based on your nationality, and not just that, your own genetics, what you're born as,
well,
your
depends on
history.
what you define as a national identity. For me, ethnicity isn't really a big part of that. More like history of
Because
the
you're
country,
Belgian.
of the nation, or the value system, the moral code, uh, the culture in itself.
Well, I disagree. Because if you look into it, at least not necessarily nationality in terms of where you're born, nationality in terms of your ethnicity, if I would use a better word, ethnicity. So say I move to England and I become an English citizen. I have English nationality, however, I still retain my Greek heritage. So I am an ethnic Greek. Which is more valid as an identity, my British or Greek identity, which is more
For
founded
sure,
on
shitload
reality.
British.
Well, that's for certain. However, the thing is, my identity, what is more accurate and more based on reality, my national one or my ethnic one?
Oh, well, knowing you, I would assume that you would, from your personal view, the ethnic one is more important. But there are a lot there may be other Greek people that would move to England and become very British.
Well,
Yeah, but they still are
That does
ethnically
not
Greek.
happen here.
for your proxy, if you want,
Okay.
I can give you a good example with maybe one of the only based French, Napoleon, and if you know Thomas Alexandre Dumas.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he
Basically, he
was
was
Corsican.
yeah, you know about him. Well, he was even if he was black, he loved French so much and was ready to do everything in his power to protect and participate in the great history of France. That he was French. That's
Yeah,
my concept of
yeah.
nationality.
However, the thing is that initially, at least, he hated France as a place. And he didn't connect himself with the French people due to his identity with Corsica. And you can see that with
Oh yeah,
at the
Napoleon.
point where his family originally immigrated to France, he didn't feel connected with the people. And the thing with the leadership was mostly to save his own ass from the revolutionaries and to rise his own self to power,
Well, yeah,
not
at
for
first he was
not for the
more of a
French people,
Corsican, but
and not for the French people, but for himself, for his own gain.
so yeah, I think we will not agree on this concept of nation or nationality. So because for me, this concept of ethnicity isn't really an important part of a nation.
Yeah, I mean that is personally more suitable because Belgium doesn't have one unified ethnic identity, but mostly a national one.
He's
And I
not
mean
wrong.
that is a solution for some countries. Take Russia, for example, where it is basically a confederation of several ethnic groups: the Russians, the Chechens, the Mongolians on the east, several.
I think your mic.
They have some
I think
representatives.
your mic's
So
cutting out
since
a
it
Yeah,
lot.
is
yeah.
so Russia basically relies on national identity over ethnic identity because if it went into the idea of an ethno state, it would basically collapse. And that is the same case with Belgium, or you could say England to a point, but I mean the British people are somewhat ethnically united because they are related at a large extent. There has been a large intermixture with the Anglo-Saxons even in Ireland or Scotland, and that is also seen linguistically because very few people actually speak the actual Irish and Scottish languages.
The Gaelic's dead.
Yeah, and you can see that on the map. It's basically nearly, not exactly dead, but it is on the brink of extinction
It basically is dead.
because nearly everyone in England speaks English, and that also goes for Ireland, Scotland, and Wales.
Look, the only time you ever see Gaelic here ever is because they put on some signs they put it there and they spent
For
taxpayers'
tourists.
reason. No. They just put Gaelic on random signs, despite basically no one speaking Gaelic. For some reason, I spent I want to say it was like £1 million of tax money on that.
Oh, well, that's basically like in like in the United States, when everyone's using English despite not knowing how to use it.
Look, I don't know why they put Gaelic on those signs. Makes no sense. Wasted
No, I
money.
mean the Americans use pretty much English in signs and
I
everything,
cannot
but
make out a word you are saying, dude.
I mean that the United States basically use English in everything, including science. However, they don't know how to use their language
No,
in terms of grammar.
they just changed parts. I don't have. I'm not somebody who gets like really.
I mean,
pissy about it.
I personally don't have that much of. I might admit it, I don't have a good accent, and I'm trying to improve it. However, the Americans,
It's
they
quite
may
a bit
have,
about your mic quality.
they may have the accent, however, they don't have the grammar. They basically write and speak like retards, put it shortly.
Look,
Um,
there's a
and
reason why they
mostly
have.
the New Yorkers.
There's a difference why they differentiate. between
Narrator, you're a bit
English-
far of your mic.
Oh, am I? All right, sorry. Look, no, there's a reason why they differentiate from English and American English, and that's just because they're basically two different things at this point. So I wouldn't say they're using it wrong. I'm not someone who gets pissy about, oh, they call it a sidewalk instead of a pavement. It's just I view them as two different things at this point. It's that's just my opinion, at least on American English. But I think it's an entirely different thing at this point. Like, yes, they use lots of similar words, but there's also differences in other words they use. So I just view them as there are two different things in my opinion, and I wouldn't go around claiming the Americans are using English wrong. You can say that, but as someone who actually is from Britain, whose first language is British, well, not British English. I don't see like a huge issue with it. If you want to get offended for us about how they use the language, go ahead. I don't care. Well, at least that's just my take on American English.
Atrocious.
It's just a different thing. But yeah, I don't get pissy about that one. But back to what I was saying about Gaelic, it's dead. So I don't even like try to say it's like on the brink. It's fucking dead. If it was on the brink, I'd maybe be able to know one person who even could speak a word in it. Nah, I've never heard someone speak Gaelic in my life.
It's a dead language, but some people can still read it, even in America.
Yeah, but as far as I'm concerned, it's dead. If like nobody, I've never met anyone over here in the country it's from that speaks it. I've heard people argue that we should go back to speaking it, but those same people have never actually learned to speak it. Which you can say what you want about those people. Yeah, but it's dead. Just accept it at this point. It's dead. But if people want us to like go back to speaking it, maybe learn the language. That's my suggestion. Is if you want to bring a language back, you should learn that language, not sit around on Discord all day saying we should start speaking that language again.
I mean, it's logical.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree, but I don't care so much that I would go out to learn. I just like if you like came up to me on the street for a survey or something and said, "Do you think Scotland should go back speaking Gaelic?" I'd say, "Yeah, probably." That's about what I'd give you though. I don't care so much that I'd give you a Discord rant about it.
So you're basically accepting your English heritage.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
I'm not like 100% Scottish.
I mean, if you basically said that to someone else that is Scottish or Irish, I think they would be pretty pissed at you.
No, here's the thing, right? Like my bloodline is entirely Scottish. Like parts of it are English. But I think people who get all pissy about England do it for no reason at times. Like I get there's history there and all that, But were you around during that history? And I think there's like a hypocrisy when people are like, oh, white people shouldn't have to do anything about slavery because we weren't around then. But then get pissy at English people for something that happened hundreds of years ago that they also had nothing to do with. That's at least my take on it. But I don't really care for the rivalry. Scotland is such a shithole that I don't see why anyone would actually be able to argue Scotland's better than England, which is factually wrong for a start. Like the public service thing, it's just it's worse, and we pay more in tax. But just in general, I don't get the whole rivalry between Scotland and England. And if people want to get pissed at me for saying that, go ahead. I don't care.
I mean, you also have a common heritage, if you think of it.
Yes,
And even ethnically speaking, because if you go at it genetically and linguistically, there is as time goes by, where there is a smaller connection between the modern Britons and the ones that were before them, and before the Anglo-Saxon invasions. Because when the Anglo-Saxons came in England, they basically mixed with everyone else. That includes the Britons, the Picts, the Scots, both Irish and Scottish. So even the Gaelic people you could think of, like the Welsh, the Scots, the Irish, the people of Man, they all have an Anglo-Saxon heritage, at least to an extent, genetically speaking.
so that's the thing, right? So
You're all
personally,
mixed, in a few words.
that's the thing, right? So, with the whole Scottish government who are trying to get independence right now, despite us already having a vote, that was voted to stay, but they're trying to basically try and make Scotland more European than. So I don't really view the UK as European. I view it as more like you have Europe, and then you have like the Anglosphere, so like Britain, America, Canada, those kinds of countries. That's just how I personally feel. I don't really see Britain as a very European country. You can disagree if you want, but
It
that's just
depends on what you call a European identity, because Europe basically differs exceptionally from one country to another.
I'm aware there's
Germany, Poland, Spain, it could all be divided into ethnic groups. Basically, they
I'm
made it.
you,
Sorry, continue.
yeah, as I said, you can make of what I'm saying as you will, but I just don't view Britain as really that European in beliefs and ethnicity. I'm not just talking solely about ethnicity, but so I don't really view it as very European. But the Scottish government are basically trying to create stronger ties between Scotland and Europe. And so, like, the party that wants independence, when they go independent in big finger quotes, they want to then rejoin the EU and stuff like that. And then, like, I'm pretty sure our first minister refused to meet Donald Trump when he was president. Don't quote me on that, but I swear she did.
That doesn't make much sense, to be honest. Like, I get the point about not wanting to basically suck the cock of another nation, but you choose not to do it for England, but to do it for the European Union.
Oh yeah, it makes no sense, and that's come from, and it's just it makes no sense at all. But to be fair, if you're a Scottish nationalist, your whole opinion is I don't want someone in Westminster tell me what to do. I want someone in Holyrood tell me even more what to do. That's the belief system of a Scottish nationalist. But it makes no sense. But they want Scotland to be more European, which I'm very against. I'm not a very big fan of Europe. But
Yeah, I basically agree on that. Like, European federalism as an ideology is basically retarded. Like, you're trying to unify peoples that can't unify. And
I
if you
just
try to do that, you're basically threading over national identities, like ethnic groups and cultural heritages.
I just really hate the EU. with a passion. I think
Same,
terrible.
but for other reasons, I'd assume at least.
I just hope it collapses. That's what I really want. I just
You,
really want the EU to collapse, and
you know,
can
call me in. I believe the EU has at least its function in some matters. Like take Albania for example. I personally hold the view that Albania should become a member of the European Union.
bootlicker.
Hmm?
I say you're a bootlicker. In general, just fuck the EU. I hope
So
everyone leaves it.
I don't.
Of course.
No, you don't. You don't get my point. I believe that Albania should join the European Union because, for strategic purposes. Because think about it. There is a ton of Albanians living in Serbia, Romania, Greece, and other countries. So the thing is that if Albania joins the European Union, the economy kind of fixes itself because you know Albania in what situation it is right now. Organ transplants, sex trafficking, the economy is completely side, and you can see that in every situation in Albania. So the thing is that if they join the European Union, the GDP rises immediately. So every Albanian that is in another country comes back to his own country because the economy has fixed itself. So you have an influx of all the refugees that are Albanians in other countries, Serbia, Greece, Romania, Bulgaria, and other countries that exist here as minorities. They come back to Albania for the
I
economic standards
I still
because
view. I'm sorry. I still view that as a bad thing because you're just
not
giving at that point you're just giving up national sovereignty for economic reasons, which I just view as an all-around wrong thing to do.
no, you don't get it, but we lose those minorities from here. We lose those Albanians. So, for economic reasons, because the economic standards have risen in Albania, they might as well join back and come back to their countries by themselves. So, we're essentially losing them as a minority without even extorting them, without even forcing them out of the
But
country.
but
They
but
just
the
live by themselves.
but the EU grows, so fuck that.
Yeah, so we live thereafter. So,
Will
Albania
you though?
joins.
Will you though?
Look, here's the plan. Albania joins. The Albanians leave and go back to Albania. We fix our own economy, then leave the European Union.
I don't trust the Greek people to vote to leave the EU.
Why not?
I just don't. I don't think you guys would do it.
I mean, the whole reason we are in debt right now is because of the European Union, because of how the euro was managed.
Still, I don't trust you guys to do that. So, still think Albania joining would be a bad thing all around.
Bad for them, not for us.
Bad for
So,
everyone because it means the EU gets bigger.
yeah, I don't care though if Greece gets an advantages. Look, if I get to Athens and see 100 less Albanians, that's a big plus for me.
Jesus
A
Christ.
huge plus. Like you can imagine how many we have here. It's like an infestation at this point. And
That's
they
probably
fuck
that's how I would describe the
and they
Muslim
fuck like
population here in
rats.
Britain.
Honestly, now they fuck like rats. They have like 3 to 5 children each.
Yeah, here's my question for you though. How many of them are raping your kids?
Several.
Several. Yeah,
I mean,
I think we got it worse here.
yeah, you have the Arabs. Here we have the Albanians and Afghans
Yeah, one of those
and
is way
Pakistanis.
worse than the other.
Yeah, not that much worse because if you think about it, statistically speaking, you can also see that by the statistics of the police, by the news outlets, by experience, because every Greek has got the same to say. The majority of the rapes and the robberies happen by ethnic minorities, whether that's Albanians, Pakistanis, Gypsies, Turks, whatever. That is always ethnic minorities. And because we have a large population of Albanians, they take a large part in that.
I'm sure Alcius would agree that this sounds like a bad idea.
Fuck the EU. So
Yeah.
Ander is kind of silent at the moment. I think I might have given him a stroke.
who?
Yeah,
I feel-
something like that. I'm just sitting here seeing if I can look up actual crime statistics on the number of like minority, rapes in various different countries.
Oh no, that's the thing.
Because-
It's
Don't
well.
you think?
I was gonna say,
You
well,
know,
it's
it
well
is
known that
quite
they don't
simple.
report them over here, so
You,
the
you know,
the police
it is
refuse
quite
to
easy.
investigate them, so you're not gonna find statistics.
Yeah, you can
It's kind of
make
easy to do. The
ethnic
police
stats.
might.
But what'd you say?
I said we can. It's illegal to make ethnic stats in most European countries.
Yeah.
I mean, the police themselves don't release statistics, but yet you can pretty much check their website because
I-
they publish. Whenever they catch someone, they publish it, like the arrest.
I
They-
swear the US have stopped releasing ethnic crime statistics as well now.
well,
Yeah, I have.
not in Greece because they don't release statistics very often. So the solution is you go to the website, you see the public. Sorry, you look at the publications of their arrest. Whenever they arrest a criminal, an arsonist, a rapist, whatever, they basically release the information. They basically say we caught a criminal. So there is a list of them available on the internet. If you see that, most of them are minorities. You can see that on the faces and information. The faces, the names, the formation. If it doesn't say ethnic minority, it basically says you can see that on the face. They don't look Greek. That goes for Albanians, Pakistanis, Arabs, whatever.
I still
Okay.
think this sounds like a terrible idea
Not for us.
for everyone.
I think we already explored everything we could say.
At least for now, yeah, without Zamascus here.
I guess you've got the topic for the next one, which is the EU good or not?
No,
That
I
could
won't be.
be,
I won't be here for the next one, and I want to talk about how much I hate the EU.
So
All right.
what's the topic for the next time?
I don't know. I won't be here.
wouldn't be really fun if everyone agrees.
Oh
I
yeah,
think,
it will.
everyone will say fuck the EU, basically.
Yeah, unless they're a Remainer. Those are like peak bootlickers.
So
Actually, I'm gonna save that for that episode because
I mean,
I'm
what's
about to start
basically
myself a rant about how much I hate Remainers.
so what's basically worse? Someone who bootlegs the European Union or NATO?
European Union.
yeah.
I mean, have you seen NATO terms out there?
Oh,
Like
there are some bad NATO bootlickers. But the thing is, you see bootlickers for the EU, they tend to also be bootlickers for NATO. Those two kind of go hand in hand.
kind of yes, like the Ukraine situation. Whenever you see the Ukrainian flag, it's basically it's kind of a neon sign saying this person is a retard.
Do you want to tell it to Vinyl?
Who?
The other lib left.
Oh, let me check.
She legit has her own channel.
So,
I forgot basically.
for my part, I said everything I had to
Oh.
say about class struggle, division between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, nation, and all that. So, if anyone want to add a little something before ending,
Well,
Nah.
I guess I would say that despite our differences, we have one common struggle.
We all hate
And
the
yes,
EU.
I mean the 40% of the 1%.
yeah, the globalist bourgeoisie.
No, we have two things we all agree on.
Or at
Yeah.
least,
We have that, and then we also have hating the EU.
The EU.
or at
of
least
course.
I don't
the
think anyone here is going to say they like the EU.
No.
I think
Don't you fucking dare.
I'm
Don't
not
do
really.
that.
I will flay you, motherfucker. Do not.
You'll
You
try,
basically
but
you awoke the sleeping giant. Right there.
Yeah.
Basically.
It's-
So
as someone who's never lived in a European country, I can't really speak with authority.
Don't you
But-
fucking dare.
I mean, the EU is managed by goblins, so that's the thing I draw the line at.
Oh, fuck's sake.
If you fucking say it, I swear to God.
I won't say the specific word. I'm
No,
just
no,
saying
Ander saying that
goblins.
if Ander about to defend the EU, don't you fucking dare.
Okay, does someone want to do the outro?
Yeah, sure. Set. No, I first want to know is Ander, are you about to defend the EU? I want to know.
I think that there are certain economic benefits to being in the shared
That's you want to be in a zone,
economic
right?
You
zone.
motherfucker. You motherfucker. You're never gonna we're gonna ban you're gonna just be blacklisted. You better start
Oh,
watching your back, boy.
You had the opportunity to say you've made an enemy for life, and you didn't.
You have made an enemy for life. For everyone here. Breadmaker's not even European and he knows they suck.
You know, you basically came into the bad side of the person who said he idolizes Ted Kaczynski.
Yeah, that's not a great
Yeah,
move.
just don't check your mailbox. Don't do it for a random view.
Yeah, don't check your mailbox. All right, I'll start wrapping up then.
Okay.
Okay, I have one final little thing to say, which is basically just my little routine by the end of this.
All right, go ahead.
Odin has catfished a girl over magic blood beer. Alright, I'm done.
Good
You
to
forgot-
know.
You forgot
Alright.
the part where basically Odin allegedly doing scam from dead men, which
We're Proxy, we're trying to wrap up here.
oh, sorry.
more, you fuck! We're wrapping up!
Alright. This has been the PCM podcast. We have been talking about class and nationality. And thank you for watching.
This may be hard to hear, since you don't know how to be sincere, like you really care about what people think. And so that's why you lip sync all the talking points and trendy buzzwords. It's dehumanizing, it's so absurd that you think that anybody cares, cause nobody cares about your politics, your taste in music, your regurgitated takes on everything, the clothes you wear or the food you eat. Please shut the fuck up, it means nothing to me. It means nothing to me, it means nothing to me.